Alright, it's Liam. I want to thank everyone at the Oasis Podcast, as you were.
Hello and welcome back to the Oasis Podcast, the ultimate audio guide to Oasis. Hope you guys are all right. We've got a really good episode today. It's been a while since I've done like just a really long, in-depth interview. This one went over 3 different 40-minute Zoom calls, so you can rate interviews and how long they were by number of Zoom calls you go over, and this was a 3 Zoom call, so yeah, pretty impressive. It's with Andrew Dawson, who is a comedy writer, as you'll get to hear, and has worked with all kinds of very cool, very exciting people that we're going to hear about. He's also a big Oxford United fan, so there's going to be quite a bit of football chat, and he's a massive Oasis fan, obviously, and so there's quite a bit of Oasis chat. So all the best 3 things in the world: comedy, Oasis, and football. All good. Yeah, it's been a little while since I've podcasted. I've actually started and stopped like 2 or 3 times with different things. I was going to do a podcast on May the 4th because that's Star Wars Day. I was going to do like a podcast with the connections between Oasis and Star Wars over the years. But yeah, I didn't end up finishing that. So I think I will put that out as a Patreon exclusive. So if you want to check that out, go and head over to Patreon. There's also a few other news bits that I will come to, but I'll probably do that in next episode because this interview is massive. So for instance, Noel has now the Black Keys album has released with 3 Noel songs on it. So yeah, I did start reviewing those on a different episode, but I really want to let those sink in a little bit more. So maybe I'll pick up with someone else to do that as a 2-hander, because often I think reviewing albums, it's sort of, or reviewing tracks, it's quite good to talk to someone else about it. What have we got going on? So we have got the event up at the for Bittersweet Home, or Oasis Collectors Group, up at Salford Lads Club on June the 16th. So Kyle and the gang are going to be there all weekend, but I'm going to be there on Sunday the 16th. So I'll be in the main room. I'll be doing some recording. I'll be doing some wandering around. There should be some interesting guests and surprise guests there. So do head on over if you're in the area, or if you can get up to Manchester. It's actually Salford Lads Club. But yeah, really excited for that. So if you haven't got your tickets, the link is in the description below. You don't have to pay for there's the main sort of entrance for the exhibition, and then you can book to see the Q&As as well, the Nick Bryan and Brian Cannon. And I think if you book for one of those, then you get to go in and view the exhibition anyway. So you may as well book for one of those. I think. But anyway, the link's in the description, so go and check it out. And and I hopefully will see you up there, and you could feature on an episode of the world famous Oasis podcast. Couple of other bits. I'm also at Reading as well. You know, that's really exciting. I'm going to be seeing Liam at Reading. I'm going to be there all weekend. I've actually got a press pass, which is very, very exciting. So if you're going to Reading as well, let me know. I'll be looking to do some interviews while I'm there as well, which is all good. Some news that's come out today. We've had the track listing for the definitely maybe 30th anniversary edition has leaked. It was because of a sort of a rogue Amazon post that has since been deleted, but clever people have managed to find a Google cache or cache or whatever, showing there, and it's the album, and then there's a bonus disc with the Mono Valley sessions and the Sawmill sessions. So we thought, are we going to get the Sawmill sessions that were released as a bootleg last year that I interviewed the guys about? But yeah, so we are getting that, but no I Am the Walrus, which is understandable because it's a Beatles cover. It probably cost them a lot of money to put it on there. But also no Live Forever for some reason, so I don't quite understand that. They do then have the Mono Valley sessions, which is good to get those. I don't think they've ever been released in full. Most of the, a lot of the tracks have sneaked out on B-sides and bonuses, but yeah, to get those all in one place is good. And there is also a sad song which is recorded at Mark Coyle's house. Now I sort of think, oh well, is that going to be a Liam vocal? But the fact it's recorded at Mark Coyle's house, Mark Coyle is Noel's mate, so is it just a Noel vocal version? Don't know. So we shall see, but we look forward to hearing the official announcement of that soon. I mean, it should be pretty soon if they're sort of accidentally leaking stuff. Oh, and this was fun. I'll just drop this in quickly here before we go to the interview. This was, I saw Ranking the Beatles podcast posted a link to this song. It's like an AI generator, like ChatGPT, but they do songs. And you give them the instruction, you give them the genre, and they come up with it. And Ranking the Beatles had got them to do a Beatles-style song of their, talking about their podcast. And and so I got them to do a 90s indie Britpop style song talking about the Oasis podcast. And it's mad. It literally does it in like 30 seconds. Crazy how mad the world is going. But anyway, let's drop this in here and then we will move on to my interview with Andrew Dawson. I'll see you on the other side.
Oasis Podcast, digging deep in the past, unearthing stories, memories that will last. James's voice soothing, like a summer breeze, sharing secrets, bringing us to our knees. Rise and fall, the rock and roll accepts the Oasis story. It's a fan's ultimate address.
All right, so welcome to the Oasis podcast. Andrew Dawson, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, how are you?
I'm very good. Well, you're probably, very, very good, actually, because Oxford United, who you're a huge fan of, have got a very exciting day coming up.
Yeah, we're in limbo. We're just recording this just between getting to Wembley for the playoff final, and then if it all goes wrong a week on Saturday, then it won't be as much fun. But yeah, it's the highest Oxford have been since, well, must be 25 years, I think. Yeah, so 90. Well, the last time we got promoted, shall I go straight into an Oasis story? Because I've got a connecting Oasis story. All right, why not? So the last time they got promoted to the second tier, Oxford United was 96, and it was April. I can't remember the date, but it would have been April 96. And basically, they had a great run towards the end of the season, and we had some brilliant players, Matt Elliott and Paul Moody and Joey Beecham, and it didn't look like it was on, but then suddenly with two games to go, if we won and Blackpool lost, I think, or something like that, it was certainly we needed to win at Crewe. But the day that we were away at Crewe was Oasis at Main Road, and I got tickets for Oasis at Main Road. So I went, this is pre-internet, obviously, so you can't check the scores. So it was very difficult. And that we can come back round to this, but Main Road was an amazing occasion. But one of the best bits was just as Oasis were on stage, a couple of songs in, they used to do the evening papers with the results in the big cities anyway, and I think the Manchester one was a pink newspaper, and one got people crowd surfing or whatever, and one got passed along so everyone could look at football results. So I'm at Main Road watching Oasis, and then the pink paper comes across, and I see that we've beaten Crewe and maybe Blackpool have lost or something. So I know that next Saturday we've got a game against Peterborough, and all we have to do is win at home to get promoted. So it's like this amazing coming together of one of the best days outside marriage and children, obviously. One of the best days of my life of just everything coming together, because seeing them at Main Road was special as well, on their home turf.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, what an amazing day. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm not a dyed-in-the-wool Oxford massive fan. I've been, over the years, I probably go, every couple of years, I'll go and see them. If like I've been, if someone's decent coming to a pre-season friendly, or if some mates are going or whatever, something like that, then I'll go. And I've followed the results, but I would never say I'm a supporter. Like I'm really happy when they win. And I do tend to like just take the piss out of my mates that are Oxford fans when they lose. So that's sort of
You can't lose. You can't lose in that scenario.
Exactly. It's a win-win. It's a win-win.
So will you be looking for Wembley tickets then? Are you gonna?
Well, I can't make it actually. I was just looking at it now, but I was actually having a look at like because I think it's just Oxford supporters at the moment, and then it goes to open sale. So I was maybe thinking about shifting it around, but with family stuff going on that day, it might be tricky. But I take it you'll be there.
Yeah, I got tickets yesterday. I had to. I mean, Christ, the ticket systems these days are so because it's all online, and it was coordinating 12 people's tickets yesterday, and you could only do 6 in a basket, and I had to use 2 different logins, and we tried to reserve two rows next to each other, so so everyone sits together. So you have to. I'm running 2 browsers. It was it was like doing the Crystal Maze or something, and the countdown's clicking away in the corner on your basket, and then one of my credit cards wasn't on one of my accounts. So anyway, it was but I got there. I think I've got tickets. We'll find out. Find out week on Saturday. Yeah.
No, I do feel a bit of a fraud as well, because I'm not like a massive fan. Like, and I've done that before. Like, my local team is Didcot Town, right? Yeah. I know you're a Didcot Town person, and like Didcot Town typically get 200-300 people at Luke Meadow, and I've been to, once again, I've been to Didcot a few times, but I'm not, once again, I follow the results. The manager is Jamie Heapy, who was in the year below me at school, right? And so it's I know him. I don't know him, but
you know him,
there's connections there with pals, and but then they got to Wembley, they got to like an FA Vase.
I remember. I didn't go, but I remember it happening. Yeah, no, I didn't go, but I remember that it being a big occasion. I think it was Stuart Bevan playing for them. Perhaps I don't know. Yeah,
he would have been there, and but I do feel like, well, it's a bit cheeky for me to go, isn't it? Because I don't. But then I suppose because you're not there every week, but then only 200 people are there every week, and then suddenly you've got.
You're never gonna. I always feel like because particularly at these sort of times, this is where a lot of I went to all the games, or I've been supporting since year whatever, and I think the thing is, if you're going to fill out Wembley, if you're club the size of Oxford, if you're going to fill out Wembley, you're going to need the fair weather fans to come, because if you only get the hardcore that come on a Tuesday night when we're going to get beaten 3-0 when it's raining and it's a nothing season, that's about 5,000, 6,000 fans. So that's going to look poor. So you're going to have, if you want to look like a big club, and also if we want to grow as a club, you have to bring that in. But I think the feeling of a fraud thing's interesting though, isn't it? Because what you and I probably share is growing up in South Oxfordshire and being Oasis fans, and there's a slight it's not quite our. Whenever I went to gigs, there was always a bit of me going, am I allowed here? Is this all right? As they get bigger and bigger, it's different. But I think there's an interesting sort of tribal thing, particularly when they were starting out. Of should I should only like Blur? Should I or something? I'm not allowed. How far north do I have to be to be authentic or whatever? And then also there's lots of like posh people up north that are claiming them, and you go, I think I'm probably closer than you are to. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, let's take it back to there then. So you grew up in and around Oxford, did you?
Yeah, so Abingdon is where I grew up. I was born in Oxford and grew up in Abingdon in a couple of different bits of it on the estates on the edge of it. And so, I mean, Didcot's similar. I lived in Didcot for a couple of years when I was commuting into London for a bit, and then but Abingdon, you'll know it's sort of not really lots going on around Didcot and Abingdon. Going into Oxford was where I would tend to go out in the evenings and stuff and have a night out. But actually, when I was sort of a teenager, the venues weren't as good as they are now. Because I think I'm right saying the venue, which is the O2 now, the Zodiac before, was shut for a little while. They filmed the video for Creep there in the early 90s, and then I think it was shut for a while, and that was the key time I would have wanted to go at gigs to start with. So we had to go a bit further afield to see bands and stuff. But Didcot and Abingdon are hardly a hotbed of music. Although we know there's quite a few musicians that come from around here, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Radiohead, as much as they're an Oxford band, they're really Abingdon.
They're an Abingdon band, Abingdon School.
Yeah, really. So,
and a couple of them, I think some of them my parents live in a little village now, and I think a couple of them maybe lived on that close, that they're very, very cul-de-sac. It's when you realise how just ordinary a lot of bands are. Forget all the artifice and stuff. You just go, oh, they just grew up in that house there or whatever. So
yeah. And the Inspiral Carpets lead singer as well, Abingdon.
Tom Hingley.
Tom Hingley, yeah.
He's a lump meat boy, isn't he? Yeah.
It's funny. So
that was
we make our
but I find
claims.
that amazing as well, because a lot of it is about the sort of the image, isn't it, as well? And I think as you get older, you learn to see a little bit behind some of that, perhaps. One of the big eye-opening moments for me was mentioning another band, but I'm a big, probably the band I've seen the most is Half Man Half Biscuit, because it's that sweet spot between comedy and music. And there was a couple of tracks they did in the late 90s called they did one called Moody Chops, which was basically, I don't know if it was directed at Richard Ashcroft or Radiohead, but the gist of the song was, what you're going to sing about next? Now you've sung about all your troubles, what now, sort of thing. And there was a bit of me going, oh yeah, there is there's something in that of you can't keep it going forever. And then they did this brilliant song called Four Skinny Indie Kids, and this would be 98, I guess. And it was all the chorus was four skinny indie kids drinking weak lager in a Camden boozer, and it was kind of hard. They just went for all the cliches of the music scene, and I think I just listened to that a little bit and went, oh God, yeah, it's not.
15, 14, 13, up against Super Mario Kart. Boom, bam, bam, boom, bam, bam, boom, bam, bam. I don't have to go to bed tonight, do I?
Yes, in 5 minutes. Remember, you've still got school tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Dear Brian. Yeah, I'm 13!
Happy birthday, Kevin.
Happy birthday to me! Happy birthday to me! Happy birthday, Dick! Go! Go!
Kevin?
Go! Are you all right?
Darling, he's losing the power of rational thought.
And the use of his arms.
He's become a teenager.
Kevin!
What?
It's your birthday, Kevin.
I know!
Happy birthday, Kevin!
Okay, stop going on about it, will you? Why isn't there bloody ice cream?
Oh, come on, Kevin. You've eaten 5 tubs on your own this evening, remember?
So unfair, I hate you!
And then literally 2 years later, or whatever it was, all right, Kev, and I'm just like, oh my God.
That's my next phase. That's what I'm doing now. Yeah, I've got the bucket hat. And
they absolutely nailed it. And then going back.
It was a really quick turn.
It
must have been a really quick turnaround for that sketch for Harry Enfield as well, because, sketch shows take a long time to, well, they can take a long time to make, but they must have, to pick up on the trend, because I don't know what year that was. Would it have been 96, 97? They did the sketch, but so it's like they've had a year of Oasis being in the tabloids to nail that. And then it's not just about Oasis being big, it's about all the kids down south putting on the swagger and the Manchester accent. And I'm sure there's pictures of me. Thank God there's no Facebook back then or anything, but with the bucket hat and all that, and around that time.
Yeah. So was Oasis the sort of when you came through and got into music, was it Oasis particularly, or was other bands around that time?
Yeah, so I mean, again, thinking about this, doing this interview has made me think about how the way into music, because it's quite, so easy to find everything now, isn't it? And I remember being sort of 14 or 15 and finding the evening session with Mark Goodyear, as it was originally before it was Lamac and Joe Wiley. And I think because, just to step back, I work with my brother Steve still now as a writing trio, and our friend Tim, who we grew up with. But as an older brother, I didn't have anyone to tell me, go and read The Enemy, listen to whatever, John Peel or what. I didn't have anyone my parents were a different generation. They didn't know that stuff. So it took a while to find it. But so I was listening to the evening session and getting more into it. And Suede and Blur, there was a real sort of a pre-Britpop wave coming through that you started to sense there was something big coming. And I loved particularly I loved the Modern Life is Rubbish. That album felt very different to everything else that was there. So I listened to that a lot for just and a lot of bands I'm still into now. Obviously, are the ones I heard on there. And then Mark Radcliffe's show. I don't know when that came in, but it was around that. That was the really formative one for me, because it was on after 10 o'clock. I'd listen to it, late. It felt a little bit like your own thing, but also he was a great curator of like comedy. He'd have comedians in, he'd have poets, he'd have sessions. He'd have Mark Kermode doing, movie reviews, and you get into indie films and stuff. So it was probably the radio. So I think I probably heard them 94 when they were starting. Was it Sound City in Glasgow and all the live stuff where you start to sense there was something bigger happening. And then I remember getting when they were on that, there was one of the tapes on Select Music magazine where they had Fade Away, and I just remember hearing that and going, oh, okay, this is really good. And then so I think I would have got Supersonic the day it came out.
Wow.
And then the other ones, but this is like I would have been 16 or 17, so it's like the perfect age to find your band anyway. But it just happened to be them, and so yeah, and all the singles and stuff. I got the Cigarettes and Alcohol, the cigarette box cassette thing, which is brilliant. Even though, by the way, I'm teetotal and pretty much have been my whole life, and I don't smoke. So again, another one of a southern kid singing Cigarettes and Alcohol at the top of his lungs when he doesn't smoke and drink, and is from South Oxfordshire. It's question the authenticity again. But yeah. So they you'll know this, I'm sure. But when they launched Definitely Maybe, they were going to do a session. They did a session in the Virgin Megastore on the corner of Marble Arch, and I remember reading about it in the NME at this point and going, right, well, because you'll know the Oxford Tube bus service is pretty good, and it would have been like £6 return from Oxford. So I was doing work experience that week. It was going to happen, so I told them I was sick or something, and I just went in with one of my mates who lived in my street, and we got the bus in because it's Marble Arch. The bus stops at Marble Arch. It was like right there.
Perfect.
So like, right, we're going to buy Definitely Maybe. Get the vinyl, even though I'm never going to listen to the vinyl, but get it signed by them, always great. So we turned up, and it's like 1 o'clock or something, and absolutely no queue anywhere in Virgin Megastore. Bought a copy of the album for later, and also again, record signings weren't like orchestrated. These days there's wristbands and there's queues and there's etiquette and pre-sales and whatever. There was nothing set up. I asked someone, they said they didn't know what was going on. So anyway, we went for a wander down Oxford Street, and then a couple of hours later came back, and there was a queue of like 1,000 people down the side of going down Park Lane it would have been. So we joined the back of the queue, and then got our gatefold albums ready to get signed, and they're letting everyone in, and you're just thinking, come on, like make it in the store, because we didn't know. That's how we just thought it was record signing. It turned out to be like a little acoustic set. Again, you'll know it, I'm sure. And Evan Dando from the Lemonheads turned up, and we didn't make it. We were about like 20 from the front. We were just like, come on, can we just squeeze in? And so you could just about hear it on the amps from outside. But at the same time, that was the day I sort of realised, oh, this is bigger. This isn't just an indie band now. This is crossed the line into something else, this band. Yeah. And I remember the NME saying, look at this queue. They had aerial photos of the queue outside and stuff.
Oh, you're just going to be a dick and do loads of daft songs. That won't work right, that won't be right. Let's do what we're doing. What? Like Dixie's Dinner, it's an acoustic song. Yeah, let's have it.
Hang on a sec. Right, so we'll
say what we'll do. We'll do sad song last, yeah? So you can just play your little game. All right? So we're doing it. You're not doing it. It's enough, isn't it? Oh. I'll do whatever.
I'd like to be somebody else and not know where I've been. I'd like to build myself a house out past the sea. Shake along with me.
So that was the time I realised I became determined, right, I'm going to see them. I've got to see them live now, because I felt particularly annoyed that I missed out, been within, 15, 20 people of being in there. So,
well, and the fact you've been there in time anyway, and then went, we'll have one come back.
That was what was gutting,
killer, isn't it? I'm sorry to raise it again. Obviously, it's
still raw.
Memory
still raw. Yeah, and I think the other thing was, equally, I look back and go, well, what was it? I probably didn't ask the right person or whatever. These days you'd ask, when are they coming? Where? How do I get to the front of the queue and stuff, whatever. And but also the alternative was sort of standing in in Virgin Megastore for like 2 hours just waiting for something to emerge, which sort of at that age didn't appeal. I don't know. I just thought, oh, there'll only be a couple hundred people, we'll be fine. Whereas anyway, it became what it became. So, but then I was determined to get tickets to see them. And the closest gig, again, we're not blessed for those sort of 2,000, 1,000, 2,000 venues. They just aren't around here. And so you got to go into London. Where do you tend to go for gigs, or did you tend to go?
This is the thing. So you are literally, I mean, if you're lucky and someone does come to Oxford, but like I saw the Zootons in Oxford like a couple of weeks ago. But other than that, yeah, you're either Birmingham, London, or Cardiff, right? We are right in the middle. And, you know, it's like, I don't know, I suppose maybe, you know, people moan, like I'm moaning about, because I'm like an hour away or like an hour and a half away, whereas someone it's in Inverness or whatever would be like, fuck you, I've got to go to like Glasgow or Newcastle or whatever. So I know it's not that bad, but compared to, you know, most people in the country, it is a nightmare. And also because we in Oxford are a pretty crap crowd. Like, you know, when people talk about, the best crowds, it's Manchester, it's Glasgow, Newcastle. These are the places or Dublin, Belfast. These are the places where it's mad and you really want to see them. We're a quiet crowd, you know. We always have
a chin-stroking crowd of sort of students and graduates. Appreciate it. We'll go away and write a lovely tweet about it afterwards about how great it was. But I mean, as a tangent, I've never really done much live comedy. We've done bits for live acts and stuff, but last year we work a lot with Peter Serafinich and James Serafinich, and there's a character of his called Brian Butterfield you might be aware of, and he did a live tour in autumn, and so we actually got to go out on tour and did a lot of venues. Like we did so I was at university in Sheffield. We did the Sheffield Lead Mill, which was amazing, and I got to go backstage there. I'd never been there, but again, you suddenly get a different eye on what it's like to be obviously a comedy act, but an act in the different crowds. And, you know, Tuesday night in Bath is a world away from Friday night in Glasgow or something like that. It was just you're right. It's not the crowd that you're going to seek out necessarily to come to.
But yeah, it is a bit of a nightmare for us because you're just like, okay. So it's an hour and a half, north, east, or west. You know, you've got that choice. But anyway, so where did you end up going?
So Brighton. I just passed my driving test just after that Virgin Megastore signing and in-store appearance, and I think I was, I was obviously there was closure required. So and I'd only just passed my test. I couldn't drive. You know, I'd driven as far as Newbury, I think. So going to Brighton for an evening gig was a bit bold, but I got tickets. I was trying to think back when I was thinking about this recently. The other thing is, like, you couldn't buy tickets. You had to have a credit card, and I was 17, so I presume I got my mum and dad to buy them.
Yeah.
And that's not very rock and roll as well, is it? That's another reason why you don't seek it out, is going, can you buy me tickets? Anyway, so I got tickets. My mate Simon and Mike, they were going to come with me, and we drive down. And then as it got closer, I think I realised how far Brighton was away. And again, pre-sat nav, will we get lost? Will we get there? However it work. I think probably my mum and dad were a little bit like, they wouldn't say it, but they were probably a bit like, it's quite a long way to drive on whatever night it was to go there. So it was 29th of December 94, the gig was. And then this dates, again, Our Price on Cool Market Street in Oxford they had a little board of selling tickets, and they had some Oasis Brighton ones with coach tickets available as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was like coach from St Giles or something in Oxford, and they take you all the way there and come back. And so I looked at these and I thought, I think this is better, because first of all, it's much better to go on a coach and stuff, like an away football trip or something. And then secondly, I only have to drive to Oxford and then get the bus and then do all that. So I said to my mum and dad, look, can you maybe get a refund for the tickets and I'll get these instead? And they said fine. But what ended up happening is my brother, who's a couple of years younger than me, so he would have been 15, and Tim, who I write with still now, and one of their other mates, they were 15. And my mum and dad said, well, do you want to go to Oasis? So they said, yeah. So my mum and dad drove them down simultaneously to Brighton, and they had a meal out in Brighton in an evening. And then and me and my mates were in the standing bit. We got the coach and did it properly. But it was a bit weird because obviously, although we've done this, it's a big trip out to see Oasis and being all like Perry in the Kevin Perry sketch, but also knowing my mum and dad are somewhere down the road, it wasn't the course. But obviously that gig at Brighton was sort of amazing and quite sort of it was one, looking back, I think from what I understand, it was one of the big ones, because the Lars were supporting, and the Lars is like have become one of my favorite ever bands, and their story is amazing. But so I got to see them, but again, there's no Twitter to say supporting us tonight is blah blah. You just walked in, and it's only after a while you sort of, who's this, and then you realise, oh my god, it's the Lars.
Yeah.
And then second support act was Ride, and so Andy Bell's playing with Ride, then not Oasis, and they're an Oxford band as well. Two boys from, I live in Headington now. Two of them went to Cheney School, and which is quite amazing as well. Again, that they came through there. And you might know this better than I do, but the folklore was that Ride after that gig sort of saw how Oasis did, and I think felt, well, that's the band we wanted to be, and we're not, or at this stage there was some sort of sense of that. I don't want to do Ride down because I love them, and but that was the rumor, and that was one. I think that might have been their last gig until they reformed, and obviously Andy Bell goes on to join Oasis, and then also I think Oasis never used to do encores, and I think that was the first encore they did.
I believe so. Yeah, absolutely.
And it was, and because I think it was Rock and Roll Star, so it was like you knew they haven't saved a song till the end like everyone does normally. It was like, we're going to do a song again.
So they open with Rock and Roll Star. They do the full set, which is the typical sort of Definitely Maybe set, basically the album with Fade Away in there. And then you've got Noel does an acoustic set, and they're quite pretty long acoustic set as well. Take Me Away.
Go on, remind me what songs.
Take Me Away. Talk Tonight, which is the first proper playing of Talk Tonight ever. So you were there
because
for that.
whatever had just come out like the week before as well, I think, and it gone to number three. So it didn't get to number one, but there was also that buzz going into the Bright one. I think when I booked the tickets, you didn't realise, Oasis are going to be, at Christmas it's going to be huge, and again, that whatever, the B-sides are so great on that as well. You sort of sense there's something bigger happening here, and it's heading beyond Definitely Maybe.
This one's called Take Me Away. Just when it falls apart, and when it's time to start, we'll sit down here for another day. And when it's time to be all the things that we are wishing away for another day.
To encore with Rock and Roll Star. It's like they didn't have any other songs. You know what I mean? So just played Rock and Roll Star again.
That was pretty much all they had, and so it was, I think it was also maybe Noel and Meg Matthews got together at that gig as well. It was like there was a lot happened through the Oasis story, so I felt very lucky in retrospect to be at that particular one, because it could have been Cardiff, could have been wherever else, Birmingham, but it happened to be there. And so that was huge. And obviously you just think it was the moment for me that I felt they tipped into another level, and then the anticipation builds, and and the tabloids start to take notice around that time, I guess. So then I went to university the next year, and I was the southern, I was a southerner, and I thought I was going north, and most of the other people that I was with, Geordies and people from the northwest and stuff, thought they were coming south to Sheffield, But so I had friends who were from Manchester, and so when Main Road came around, I had a friend Phil at university, and him and me and Johnny went to my friend Johnny, who is still my gig buddy to this day. He's in London now, but he used to live in Newcastle. He's the one that dug out the tickets that I'll talk about later. He's got the archive of all the tickets he's ever had. So anything I've been to a gig with him, he can corroborate the evidence of what date it was and what went on. But so we went to, Phil lived in Manchester, or near Manchester, and so we got tickets for Main Road, and then just figured it out when we got there. But I mean, I think that was when John Squire came on and did Champagne Supernova that night. And at the time, there was all the bravado of the Gallaghers and stuff, but when you hear them talk about it afterwards, you realise they were playing it cool, but playing Main Road, which obviously doesn't exist now as well, and it was on its way out maybe by then, I don't know, but to play that and to realise they could fill a football ground, a stadium-sized audience, I think that was another breakthrough gig to have been at, and it was it was like a mini festival because, you know, we got there early. I think doors opened. I'm pretty sure you'll know all this, but it was I think they played the 1966 World Cup final in full on the video screens, and then I think it was Ocean Colour Scene, Manic Street Preachers, and then them, and then, as I say, special guests of John Squire, and that would have been with the Stone Roses had split up again by that point, so it was quite you hadn't not many public appearances from him.
Yeah.
So that was again another amazing time to be there, and then Nebworth came when I think a few of my friends went, but I think I picked a holiday. One of my friends were on a holiday, so I offered to go on holiday. So I went there. And actually, I was envious to start with, but, you know, when I see the footage of Nebworth, there's a bit almost like it was so big and so vast that I think I was quite spoilt by the times I'd seen Oasis, that, you know, I didn't feel like I missed out. I've enjoyed watching the documentaries and the Supersonic and the Nebworth footage and stuff. And from what I'm told, also, like, my friends who were there had a great time, and I think the Prodigy was supporting, weren't they? And they also said how great they were that night.
Because I was there on the Saturday where the Prodigy played, and to me, like, obviously Oasis was special because it's the songs, you know, and that's what everyone was there for. But in terms of a performance, was the Prodigy like they were just as one of the most powerful. I mean, I saw the Prodigy a couple of times outside of that as well, but, you know, there's I've got a picture of Keith with the green Firestarter hair, like, because he came out where I was in Nebworth, because you got the first, like, there's like a semicircle of the first bit, and it goes back after that, and I was like near that first border, and I was about probably 6 feet away from that first border. And Keith came around on that border, and so I've got a picture of him on people's shoulders, like, I'm like, look at how, like, he's right there. So and that was
amazing,
incredible. But that was the first time they played. I don't know if it was the first time they played it. It was the first time I'd heard it, the song "Breathe," that then goes on to be a massive single. And Maxim's going, "Breathe with me, breathe," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, breathe, breathe." I forgot to breathe. So thank you, Max. In reality,
there was I saw him around that time. I think I saw it would have been like V97 maybe or something, and I was at the Leeds bit, and there was a collapse, and everyone was going nuts at the Prodigy, obviously, and there was a collapse, and it went in, and people were quite hurt, and there was people get breathing difficulties and stuff. And afterward, they stopped the gig, and then they came in. Right, let's get back on the show. Breathe with me. And you just go, not that song, not that. That's not the appropriate.
Well, the time I thought was funny was I went to see them at Reading Rivermead. That was for me being to, you know, Reading.
Yeah, that's as close as it comes.
And so I saw quite a few gigs there. I saw like Cast and a few others, and all those Britpop bands. Like, it was always pretty mad. Like, you know, always like, you know, people crowd surfing, getting booted in the head, and getting burned with cigarettes and stuff. And but the Prodigy. So I was ready. You know, you're psyching yourself up. This is going to be nuts. But then looking around, and everyone's just dancing by themselves, chewing furiously and drinking water. And as a sheltered Oxford boy, I'm like, I don't quite understand this. Why are people what's going on here? This is a different experience. It's
a different scene.
Yes, very different scene. But no, that was amazing, because you had Jizz Butt playing guitar as well. And it was just like awesome. So but no, that was cool. So Nebworth. So you didn't get to Nebworth, but then
didn't get to Nebworth. I was reflecting. The only other time I've seen them play live was at Wembley in 2000. Then, and I think there was again, with any band, there's I was there in the early days. There's a half man, half biscuit song I'm reminded of, which is I can't remember which song that I forget all the titles, but there's the one of the verses is before the gods that made the gods were born. That's when you first got into the Manics, and it's that thing of being who was first. That's what matters. I was there in the early gigs, and there was a bit of me by then of looking around Wembley, going, you don't have the cigarette and alcohol cigarette case cassette. I do. There was a bit of that by then, I suspect, and also probably there was there's a thing of when it becomes everybody's that you look around Wembley and go, oh, it's not quite the same atmosphere. And I don't know, I was very spoiled by having to catch them at a 2000 venue. And as a side note, when the Verve came back, they were playing a tent in Reading. They put them in a tent in Reading just before Bittersweet Symphony came, and I bought a day ticket because I thought that's a tiny venue to see them in. They're about to go big, so I went. No one else wanted to come, so I just went by myself. The only time I've ever done that, and it was packed. It was brilliant. But see, there is something about seeing these bands when they're small, and I'm very lucky to have seen them at those points. But then, so Wembley after that was sort of the last. I mean, you'll remember the support. I can't remember who. Maybe it was Doves, maybe.
Doves and
Happy Mondays. Yeah, okay. And that's probably the first time I'd seen Happy Mondays, which was great as well. So it was a really fun occasion as well. It's just it was just a bit, those huge stadium ones become a bit bloated and impersonal, and particularly in the days pre sort of proper video screens and stuff, you couldn't really see a lot of what was on stage. But
I think the vibe had changed as well. Like I was just messaging Anna Doble, who's a writer who's got a book out about her experience with the 90s, and she sort of said, "Oh, I went to see Oasis at Nebworth wearing a Blur t-shirt," and I'm like, "Well, actually, in 1996, you would have got away with that. That was absolutely fine because it was just camaraderie. And if you were into Blur, if you were, all the Britpop wars is bullshit. Like if you're into Blur, great. It means you're into indie music. It means you're not into fucking,
whatever the mainstream,
or R. Kelly or something. So great." Whereas then, but in 2000 and in 2005 and 2008 on those tours, I probably wouldn't have recommended wearing a Blur t-shirt.
It's like an away shirt in the home end, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it would have got violent, but because Oasis was more of a party atmosphere, but it was just like
it's provocative, isn't it?
It changed. Yeah.
Well, I remember going back again. This is my memory. Some of mine have been backed up by the retrospectives of Britpop, but I remember obviously Suede and Blur had a big rivalry, and that played out in the NME between Brett Anderson and Damon Albarn and that. But I remember, I feel like Shed 7 and Oasis had some beef in the very early days, and then it became Oasis and Blur and all that. But it's obviously it's great for publicity. It's great for scene, isn't it, to have rivals, and it's probably the NME will have fostered that, and then the tabloids did the same, because it's great to have people, some of the quotes that Noel came out with and Blur came out with, that's headline stuff, isn't it? So it helped fuel that whole scene.
No, absolutely. And I think it's great. It was my kind of soap opera, because I didn't watch EastEnders, but you get the NME every week. Oh, who said what this week? It was brilliant. But so around this time, obviously you're loving your music, and then you said there was the interweaving of comedy as well around this time.
Yes, so comedy really started with me. So my brother Steve, obviously I've known him since he was born, and then Tim, our friend, he actually went to nursery school with Tim in Abingdon, with Steve in Abingdon when they were about 4, but they got to know each other at secondary school, and so the three of us, like when we were all sort of teenagers, we had a camcorder, the video camera, and we would try and make films in the summer holidays when we were like 11 or 12.
Love it.
And then they weren't very good, but they ended up being accidentally sort of funny. So we ended up making more and more sort of videos, but we never really showed them to anyone. We'd show them to our mates a bit, and do like spoofs of Terminator or whatever was going on there. And we kept doing it through. When we were older, we always enjoyed it, that creative side. Steve was in bands as well, by the way. He played a lot of music, and my dad is a jazz musician. So there was always music and stuff in the house. But we kept making. This was the thing we kept making, basically. And when we got into our sort of early 20s, I'd finished university and got a proper job and everything, but we were still making them. And Steve went to Bournemouth University, where it's quite good for media. That they have a lot of TV and equipment and stuff. So in the holidays, he eventually got permission to use this stuff. So we used to make sort of better and better things. And we'd be in it, but we're not great performers. We never were. Well, I'll speak for myself. I was never a great performer. But the ideas we had, I think, were quite good. And so we ended up in 2001, we sent, there was a BBC talent initiative that they said it was for sketches, and so we filmed some things and sent them in, and they got picked to be refilmed for BBC Choice, which dates it because that was what BBC Three was called when it first launched.
Choice, yeah, I remember that.
And the other finalists, Sharon Horgan was one of the other finalists, and Alan Carr was in the stand-up final, and Howard Reed, who's, I don't know if you know, he's a brilliant comedian and does a thing called Little Howard that's really good, was in this animated section. So there was a good bunch of people, but I was working in London at the time, and the others were just sort of starting to work or finishing university. So we it gave us a foot in the door, and we got to meet a couple of important people. And then we just pestered them for the rest for the next couple of years, and it was quite slow going. We eventually got a gig writing on a Channel 4 show called Distraction that Jimmy Carr hosted, and we were asked, "Can you write jokes like one-liners?" And we were like, "I don't know, but we sort of have a go and to see what happens." And we did some audition writing and got in through Channel 4 to them, and we also we'd also got a video on Adam and Joe's. They had a show called Takeover TV where it was like cable access, they'll accept things. Do you remember?
I was literally going to mention Adam and Joe because what you were saying there is, it's so interesting that thing about going and getting the the camcorders and stuff, because like we were doing that and making like stupid videos as like, spoofing the Beastie Boys Sabotage, which in itself was a spoof,
a spoof, yeah.
And so just like, that idea. But that was the thing with Adam and Joe and Takeover TV. It was like that sort of early day. Now everyone's doing like TikTok or whatever, but yeah, to actually have a camcorder and make a silly film, like Edgar Wright was on like Live and Kicking, because it's like, oh, here's this like 15-year-old kid that's made a silly film, let's put it on Saturday morning TV.
Brilliant stuff.
Oh, excellent. No, you look fine, really. You were much better than last year. Yes, we've got a familiar face back on the show, a former video maker from last year, Edgar Wright. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You've also had something to do with this year's programme, haven't you?
Yeah, I designed the credit sequence for the Gimme the Vids bit, which took ages.
Yeah. So, quickly, what sort of other films have you been doing?
I've done an hour-long Western,
a
black and white French film, and a pop video for a group called Bum.
And what's the one that we're going to see now? What's it called?
Oh, the new one is Infrared Fred.
Right, let's have a look.
Yo, give me that.
Yeah, it was.
I think maybe in that thing he won. Didn't he win a camcorder in that competition or something? He won it was a big bit that got him started, I think. But he had stuff on. So Takeover TV originally was in like 95, 96. And it wasn't hosted by Adam and Joe, but they had a lot of stuff in it. And I think Adam Buxton was key to curating it and doing a lot of the videos. And then when it came back in 2002, after a couple of series, and Adam and Joe had their series, which, is brilliant and hugely influential on my comedy and growing up. Then in 2002, they opened it up and they were hosting it. And we got a video on there. So I think it was a combination of going, the BBC picked a video in one way and you go, oh, okay, well, we did well. But then when Takeover TV took the video, it was like, okay, it's not just one bit of luck. Maybe we could turn this into something more. So that's where we took more meetings and met more people. And a couple of the early people we met were Ian Morris, who ended up writing In-Betweeners and all sorts of other things since. And Robert Popper, who, we've always loved his comedy, and did Look Around You with Peter Serafinowicz and wrote Friday Night Dinner. So it was a good set of people we got amongst, and it was very exciting. And when we would go for meetings at Talkback at the time, it's like Alan Partridge was being made, Ali G was there, Look Around You, all these brilliant things, some of the panel shows. And so you'd sit in reception, you just see like all your comedy heroes walking through. So again, it felt like, even though we were only very early, it was very early days for us and we were a long way away from some of that, you sort of thought, oh, we're getting meetings in this room and we're around these people, and it just gave us a little taste of it was possible. So we kept going and we picked up jobs, part-time. I was having to take holiday time from my day job. By this time I was working back in Oxford for Nielsen, which you'll know if you used to come in on the A40 to Oxford. It's a big building by the Park and Ride. And I didn't tell them in my first job, I didn't tell them I was moonlighting on the side writing comedy. Oh, I did tell them rather, and my boss used to use it as a bit of a stick to beat me with every time. If he thought I was slacking, he'd be, "Oh, well, you've got your mind on TV or whatever." So when I changed job, I didn't tell anyone in the office that I was writing on the side, but I would take a lot of weird holidays. We'd get a job and I'd take a week off here, and then, every Friday for 6 weeks here or whatever. And so eventually it got to the point where I had no holiday left to actually go on holiday or anything. So a job came up part-time at Nielsen that was 3 days a week. And at the time, certainly, I think it was intended for not for I would have been in my mid-20s guy. It was intended probably for a parent to take, part-time work to look after kids or whatever. And so I applied for it, and then my boss was like, "What the hell are you doing? This isn't, you're not very ambitious if you're cutting down your days." I said, "Well, the thing is, I've got this sideline, and I'd like to try and turn it into something." And they were really encouraging, and they said, "Well, why don't you stay? We'll make your job 3 days a week, and you can do that 2 days a week." And what was really good about that, it's a very safe. I think you'll understand it if someone, you've got a sensible job, but you also had that desire to be in bands and stuff. This was like, to make the jump fully into going from a safe job into comedy writing I couldn't have done that, I don't think, because I just would have thought, well, what am I doing? And actually that stepping stone of going 3 days a week, that covers pretty much the house, the bills, the basics, and then comedy is pocket money on top of that. And that just meant it was a sort of a safety net. A lot of people say, go for it. Don't just give, if you want to be in music or if you want to be in comedy, just in writing, just give up everything. And then you've got a pressure on yourself. And I'm like, that is my idea of hell of.
Right. Well, also, like, that's why you have this imbalance of like private school kids and rich kids being the ones that are getting, because they can afford it. Like, that was the thing when I did a media degree, and then I graduated, and it was like, okay, so now I actually need to try and get a job in the media. I did a couple of placements at like TV companies and stuff. And it was like literally a revolving door of people willing to work for free. And then they come in, and literally, like, as I'm sort of my last job in my 2 weeks where I've worked for free is then bringing in and setting up the interview for the new person who's then going to take over and work for free. It's just a revolving door. And I was like, I can't, and they said, "Oh, we'd love you to come back, actually." It's like, "Well, are you going to pay me?" "No, if you want to carry on unpaid, though." I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I've never, my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, was like, she was studying and I had to work, and that was it. Like, if you're willing to either, yes, have mummy and daddy support you, or two, just be on the dole, live in a bed.
Well, that's it. But even then, I think that was more of an option in previous decades. I don't think that's quite as easy an option. You hear of all the artists that in the 80s were able to take the dole, and then both in comedy and music, and use that time. And okay, you sort of, you're living in not the plushest circumstances or whatever, but you're getting by and you're able to do your art. I don't think that even that's possible now, is it really? But yeah, so having that safety net was a big thing. And then after 2 years of doing part-time, so very cautious way in, but we had enough work to like go, all right, I can't fill up a year yet, but also, that once you throw yourself into it, more will come, hopefully. But I packed up my desk. I left on very good terms. I kept all the CD-ROMs, dating it again, that I needed in case I needed to pick up. I did go back and do a little bit of, not consultancy, but they needed extra projects, so they brought me in that summer, and that just helped top up for a couple of weeks' work. I got a bit of extra pay, but it was scary, because the same is like, if there's no money, I can't operate like that. I probably could have lasted 5 or 6 months on savings, and then that was that. But 5 or 6 months isn't long to get you, particularly when you're waiting for people that aren't in a rush to get back to you and stuff. So you're the only one pushing things through. So, and what was lucky is so I kept working with Steve and Tim. They gave up their day jobs full from full time to nothing, and then I joined them 6 months later, and I'd just become a dad, so it was like the dumbest time to do it. But retrospectively, it was like, we'll do it and see what happens. And still, I'm not. Self-employment in itself is, in any form, is tricky, and you have to generate your own work a lot, and some of it comes your way, but a lot of it is self-generated. So that was where it started. It's very unlike me. I'm very sort of safe. you know, go for safe options and stuff. So it was very uncharacteristic, but did it, and it sort of, we built stuff. We worked on some sketch shows. We worked on some entertainment shows. The other thing is we weren't too like bothered about going, well, we can only write the thing that's purest us comedy. We were very much like, let's get on the entertainment shows. Let's, where there's work, let's do it. And because we come from that place of bills get paid first, and then if we get choice, brilliant, then that's great. And over time we've had more choice, but still, I think, you know, you're in a very luxurious position if you can afford not to take some jobs that aren't your purest thing. But I mean, dynamic wise, what's interesting, I think, and again, I've been reflecting a bit before this on, it's a bit, one of the things we did see is obviously the way they split the royalties and Noel taking the songwriting credits. The bands that sort of stuck together in general are the ones that split the songwriting credits. And I think that imbalance, when obviously somebody is in it, you look around the room and go, well, he doesn't, I need some money, and he's a millionaire or whatever. And I just think that thing of everyone in different places, you're not quite united. You're not a team then, are you? You're not on in the same position. And I think from Oasis and others, we learned, we went from very early on, right, we're splitting everything 3 ways. We were all working together. It's all for one and one for all. We've had things where someone said, could you know, there are very few writing trios. There's quite a few writing partnerships, very few trios. So we didn't even know if it's possible to work like this, but we were very much, look, let's try and do it all together or not at all. And as such, when people have said, oh, can we have, we've all been picked out in different rooms and said, could we just have so-and-so back? We've just gone, yeah, it doesn't work like that, because it's like today that person was good, but also they were inspired by other person's idea, and another way it would be someone else. And there's a bit of, there was one story is we were working on one project that we weren't having a load of fun on. I won't say what it was because everybody works for, we'll end up working for everybody again, but it was, they were trying to figure out who wrote the funniest jokes. We tend to send like 2 on, if it's a show that's existing, we'll send 2 of us in for the day, not all 3, and the third one can be working on our own projects then. But we'll mix that up. But they wanted to know who was writing the funnier jokes on one thing. So this was when they gave us a computer, while we were on our laptops. They said, right, you're on this computer and you're on this computer, and 2 hours you've got to write the jokes. It was like a little competition or something.
What?
We were like, we're not doing this. So after an hour, we just swapped over computers, and so they just read it, and you go, just like, you can't. No. Someone inspires a setup, someone inspires a punchline. It builds. This is how we work. Don't look inside the machine. Trust us. Either if you're happy with what you're getting, or you're not. But you don't need to worry about how it works or anything. So we've actually told our agent a few years ago, don't, if anyone asks for one of us, don't tell us. We don't want to know, because often we know that, as I say, that's a slightly warped view of particularly what happened that day or whatever. But so trying to keep things as the 3, but it means that we're all in it at the same time. We've been able to, you know, it's since I went full time, it's about 17 years now. So it's been working, and it means we're all in the same place, and our ambitions are the same, and what we need from jobs is the same. And I think you look back at some of the bands that didn't have that, and it's hard to see how you'll ever be on the same page as each other if somebody's getting paid a lot more than others, you know.
And that was one of the things I thought was interesting, was that, working as a trio, but obviously 2 brothers and then a non-brother, although you're called the Dawson brothers, which I think is quite funny. That reminds me of like the Brett Domino trio, even though there's only 2, going back to the comedy music.
Ben Folds 5,
which I like that. Ben Folds 5, absolutely, But so I like that. But there's very much that dynamic, isn't it? Because it's like the 2 brothers and then another person who isn't the brother. I mean, who is it? Would you that's obviously a tricky dynamic, you know, working with a brother. Would you then say having the third party in there? I know it's a good friend from back in the day anyway, but and how does that dynamic then work in terms of if you're in a room or working separately, or how does that, like, what's the nuts and bolts of that?
Well, so I mean, first of all, on the first part of that, the great thing, if it was just, it wouldn't work without the 3 of us, because Steve and I, particularly when we were starting out, would just argue and there'd be no adjudicator. So Tim is, in the early days, is sort of peacekeeper and adjudicator. He's just someone both of us will listen to, because still, I think Steve would admit it. We don't listen. You don't listen to your siblings' advice, do you? Never. In fact, you do the opposite almost. I mean, slight tangent, but my dad was my dad is still he still plays jazz in his 80s. Is a musician and plays banjo and guitar and stuff, and that wasn't his main job, but that was what he started out, and then got proper jobs, and then has gone back into it in retirement. And also he's big into football and Oxford United, and still comes with me now. And so in a way we split up as brothers. I got into football very early and went with him to that and played and stuff. And Steve got into the music side, and it was almost like we didn't compete. It's like, right, well, if you're going to do that, I'll do this. So to get his affections or whatever. So, so I think, yeah, Tim helps with the dynamic. It's a casting vote. It doesn't always work that he's in the middle. Often it's other ways, but particularly in the early days, it just meant also, I think someone laugh that isn't your sibling. That I'm not bothered about making Steve laugh particularly. Well, probably am more these days, but in the early days, it's like, I don't care about you. But if there's someone else there, suddenly it's more enjoyable. So I think it also felt a bit like, well, this is just us, like in our back room at our house in Abingdon doing this. If it's just the two of us, whereas bringing someone in, sort of having someone else out, almost endorses it to be this is a real thing. Not he's just another kid from Abingdon as well, but it made it feel more real. And then
that feels to me, like getting a drummer for the first time. Right, because that was it. Like when starting out in a band, and when you've got two people with guitars, that could just be two people with guitars. Whereas then the first time you're like, oh, you've got a drummer, and they're sat there for an hour screwing things on. You're like, oh, well, we have to.
It's real. He's got an actual kit.
It's like, oh, then we need amplifiers. Then it's like, we're a real band now, So I suppose that's the dynamic, isn't it? Well, this must be serious now, because this isn't just two people goofing. This is like there's a grown up in the room, even if it isn't, even if it's just a pal.
Totally. And then the way it tends to work now is we all live in different bits. Tim's in Surrey, Steve's in London. We've all been in different places, but very early on we were early users of Skype. We used Google Docs before it was like it was called Writely before Google bought it, and it like collaborative software. So we've always been looking for ways of doing that. So when like COVID hit, actually we were fine because we were used to working offline or online rather, and not in the same room. So it depends on different jobs. There's some things we'll write together. There's some things we'll almost always come up with ideas together. Then we'll take away bits, put it together. So sometimes it's not as efficient as three single writers output, but it's probably close to two writers output. And also the best thing of it all, and this is what's seen us through, I think, is when you have a really good day, a good bit of news comes through, you celebrate, but you also like someone is like, right, all right, don't get too big for your boots or whatever. And also on the bad days where you get a rejection, you've got two other people that understand it and go, yeah, well, they were idiots, they made the wrong decision, we're right, blah, blah. You know what I mean? You're not just and I think I drive myself mad and also you've got someone, whenever you send a script out, two other people that have now got a lot of experience have passed over it, so I know it's not going to be completely terrible, because it's been edited twice. When I write anything by myself, and then send it to them, you're always a bit like, is this any good? And that's people who are solo writers. I don't know how well I couldn't do it, I don't think. And having that check is almost going like, well, it's not embarrassing, or if it is, three of us have got it wrong, so we can console ourselves with that.
No, absolutely. One thing I definitely wanted to ask you about, and I didn't even realize you were involved in this. I know when we first spoke over Twitter, the Funny or Die Oasis sketch that Nico did. So I had no idea you wrote that. Or you guys wrote that.
Yes, so and it was us and Nico. So we I think we met Nico working on the Kevin Bishop show. We'd just come off. We'd written on the Peter Serafinowicz show, which also had some great musical spoofs on there. I don't know if you know his Ringo Remembers sketches.
Love it.
So we were. Well, if you watch back after this, if you watch back the one on the roof of the Apple building.
Go for a poo.
That's it. Yeah, in the background on the roof is Steve and I are Apple employees between the chimneys, dressed in 60s clothes.
Mate, and, I know all of the Ringo Remembers off by heart.
Oh, good.
That is my favourite. Like that's just something I'll just put on.
I think we sort of wrote was the Imagine one. About how he's just bragging about all his wealth and stuff like that.
I thought it was bloody boastful. Mate, honestly,
I'm so glad I'm not poor.
I've got millions of pounds.
So John said, "Hey, Ringo, I've written a new song. Would you like to come over and listen to it?" And I said, "Yeah."
Hey, Ringo, come and listen to my new song. I think it's the best one I've ever written. See what you think.
When I heard those first few bars, I was hooked. I thought, this song is bloody brilliant. But then he started singing.
I've got so much money. I've got millions of pounds.
I thought it was bloody big-headed.
I'm so brilliant and wonderful. I was the best one out of the Beatles.
When I heard that, I was bloody furious.
And I'm so glad I'm not poor. I'm so glad I'm not poor.
He does the best Beatles impressions, doesn't he? And the best impressions. But Nico does the best Oasis impressions, I think. And so we were working. James Serafinovich, Peter's brother, was running Funny or Die, and we got brought in to write a couple of days a week on whatever sketches were coming up, or we could pitch sketches and stuff. And when that was, it was Dig Out Your Soul was coming out, and we thought we were trying to do things that were timely in the news and stuff. And so, you know, having a love for Oasis, and we just like did a little behind the scenes thing, which I know you've covered anyway. I listened to it. Nico pointed it out to me, which is when I started listening to the podcast, in fact, I think. And it was lovely to hear it talked about, because, you know, it's quite easily forgotten, but watching it back, it's really lovingly done. And that Steve, my brother, did the music for all of it. And Nico just did all these, you know, the added all the Liam and Noel speech. But I think we just got to the nub of what I really liked is, having watched followed Oasis closely, I think that attitude of particularly Liam being a rock and roll star, but being sensitive about what he sings about, very personal. But then when asked about it, it's like, oh no, it's not about Nicole. This song, all that sort of stuff was great. And then Nico's just got the little flourishes and the nuances and the mannerisms as well. God, he's so good at the in that one and all the Oasis ones he's done. But and that was a lot of fun, because obviously it's just on a lot of sketch shows. If it's a TV one, they might go, well, are people interested in Oasis? Are they, you know, is it you know, Colshaw's done stuff, but it tends to be a bit more broader rather than fan-based stuff. But it was lovely doing those sort of sketches with Funny or Die, because it was quite guerrilla. I think we filmed the Nicole bit, the Songbird sort of parody was like, it was in Regent's Park, and it was only afterwards we got back to the office, because it was out of Hat-Trick Productions that they sort of umbrellaed it. And they said, "Where did you film this?" And we were like, in Regent's Park. And they said, "Oh, I think you have to pay the Queen £400 to film in there." And we're like, well, it seems a bit much now. And they're like, well, we'll just put it up, and if we get a complaint, I mean, see if any Regent's Park employees are listening now, they might come back and charge Hat-Trick for that. But yeah, it was very on the fly. It was done around Camden on the canals. We managed to find a Dig Out Your Soul poster that was up. You know, it was all very, and that was directed by Al Campbell, who's you know, gone on to do, he's done something new, Inside Number 9. He did all the Charlie Brooker stuff. He did The Change recently. He's a brilliant director. But it was only a handful of us, you know, me and Stephen, Tim, Nico and Al, and that was it, and James, and that was it. Bad wigs and everything. But yeah, it was great to have done those. And we did a little bit. Nico went on to do the Stone Roses second coming. We did a little bit on that as well, but that was mainly Nico. But it was great, again, doing something about things that, you know, people care about, but that sometimes TV producers don't want to make sketches about, whatever, you know, because they think it's not got an audience. So.
Or they make it really, really obvious. Like I did an episode just on Oasis parodies.
I think I listened to a bit about.
Oh, you listened to that one, yeah. And that was because and the Funny or Die and the obviously the Harry Enfield, like we're saying, like are well ahead, just because most things, it's like the Hale and Pace one is actually quite funny, like but you know, and things like that. But then it's mainly just, you know, or they're having a fight. You know, brothers are having a fight, and brothers rip off the Beatles. Like the Spitting Image one is really, really funny, but ultimately it is just the same thing over and over again. It's two brothers have a fight and rip off the Beatles. Whereas it's not. It's the nuances for the proper fans that make that just brilliant. Like just all the, like you said there. It's that that dichotomy of, you know, this geezer. You'd think if Liam's going to write songs, he would, because the way he sort of portrays himself and the way he sings Noel's songs, you'd think it would be like Sex Pistols. But no, he writes when he writes, and and the melodies he writes for himself tend to be like really high and sweet and quiet.
Yeah.
And it's like, what
There's a song, Little James, isn't there? Little James is like, God, it's so sweet. It's not the, but again, but it's almost like when he gets to an interview, and if someone asks him about it, he'd be like, "What? Yeah, God." It's like, God, did he? He didn't think he'd have to ask questions about, answer questions about it, you know.
I kid you, right? He's written a song called Nicole, right? And it kills me to say it, right? But it is fucking mega, right? And that is it. It's not about nothing, man. You know what I mean? People get given it's about, like, you know, my wife or whatever, right? But I'm not one of these pansy boys sitting around writing tunes about my wife. You know what I mean? It's just a song about me having it with fucking birds. You know what I mean? Like, called Nicole. Next question.
Oh, I really love you, Nicole. Blood Appleton, you used to be in an all-girl band. It wasn't all saints.
Not hard, is it, writing songs? It's like making a sandwich with your face, isn't it? Bit of bacon, you know what I mean? Have a bit of cuttlefish, bit of cress, yellow pickle, brown pickle, it don't matter. Because I am the bollocks at making sandwiches.
It's so funny, isn't it? Yeah, it's like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, no, it's not about that. Not about that. And it's like, you know, you were a singer in the All Saints. It's like, no, it's not about Nicole. It's just, you know.
Yeah, it's just throwing them off the scent with these. Yeah, it was really fun. I've watched it back recently, and it was very good capture. I think that's it. It's often, if it's a broad sketch show, you go for the obvious, the low-hanging fruit thing, as you say, Brothers Fighting Beatles rip-off, and actually that doesn't even scratch the surface of what there is. But that's what they think people will get. But actually, often there's subconscious stuff you're picking up as you watch interviews and stuff that I think we got a bit of that in there. But done with completely with love as well, and I think that shows, you know, hopefully. I often wonder if they've ever watched it, but anyway, you always do when you're doing impressions. One, you know, we did a Sherlock sketch on another show, and Stephen Moffat watched it and retweeted it when he was still on Twitter. And you go, "Oh, that's brilliant! I love that." We did an online one. This is going back a long time, 14, 15 years ago when Lost was on. We did Dawson Brothers did a little animated sketch series on YouTube when it was very early, and one was about the Lost title sequence and how sort of basic it was. I don't know if you remember. It was like just the word Lost spinning. It was like a screensaver. And we did a bit taking the mickey out of that. And then our agent got a call over the weekend after we put it up, because it made it to the front page of YouTube, because there used to be a front page of YouTube. It wasn't all algorithms. And it got 500,000 views overnight, whatever, which again was big then. And our agent got a call. They said, "What have you done? Have you used copyright material?" And we're like, "We don't know." And we said we had a call from Bad Robot saying they need to speak to us. And we're like, "Oh God, okay." And anyway, our agent called them because they were filming in Hawaii, or whatever, on the Monday, and they said, it was just a guy who said, we just wanted to say J.J. Abrams has watched the sketch and he thinks it's hilarious, and he said, if the guys are ever in LA, you know, drop by. And we were like, well, don't think we're gonna plan to be in LA anytime soon, but you know, if you want to fly us over. And it was like, you know, we don't want to fly you over necessarily, but yeah, it was a guy like J.J. Abrams has seen it. So it's always lovely if you've done something and it's taken the mickey, but it's with love, and it's appreciated by the people that did it, rather than that it's based on.
Yeah, and I mean, just to say, like, you've resisted the urge to drop names, and so I'm just going to drop some names of like people you've worked with, and because it does feel like you said that you were kind of those guys that like Coogan and Serafinovitz and things were sort of established, and then you guys were just coming up sort of a little bit younger as the writers. But you know, like Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright, all that whole generation. I suppose you've got like I sort of think of them as the day-to-day generation.
Yeah.
And then there's like the next ones that are a little bit younger than those, which is like the Simon Pegg and then the, you know, Mark Heap and Space and that gang, although there is obviously crossover.
Yeah.
And then, and that for me, then Mitchell and Webb and all those sort of guys and that was, I don't want to sound old, like, oh, things were better in the 90s or in the, you know, the 2000s, but that generation feels like the last great. Every generation's got, like, you know, you had the Young Ones gang and the Comedy Store gang in the 80s, and then you've got the day-to-day, and then you had that gang like Friday Night Dinner and things like that going on to there. it just does feel like that's like talking about a Britpop generation. That felt like a generation of just incredible writers that did grow up in the 90s, right? And so had that influence. And yeah, and obviously you've been a part of that, working with Sarah Vinovitz, with Mitchell and Webb. Yeah, I mean, it's what do you think it was about that? I mean, do you think that was a truly, like, can you sort of look at it as a generation of people? And if so, what do you think it was that kind of created that?
Well, I think a lot why there hasn't been as many of those sort of generations in that same sort of fashion is I think the sort of how split media is now, and how we don't have unified experiences in the same way. See, Space, I think I was going out on Friday night, so I ended up watching it on DVD. It was, you forget that if you watched it on a Friday night, or if you're out on a Friday night, you didn't watch these things, So I remember those things were, but they were unifying things, weren't they? Everybody would watch these shows and know these people, and it would come through. And of those generations, I don't know, you're probably aware of it, is the Blankety Blank special they did on Comic Relief, which just had all that generation. It was like Nick Frost as Willie Rushton, Peter Serafinovich as Terry Wogan, and Kevin Eldon's on there, and Simon. It was like Matt Lucas as Sue Pollard. It's just this great little trippy thing that they put on at like 1 a.m. on Comic Relief. But yeah, I think you start, there's a lot of cross-pollination in that scene of people moving in, Spaced and Big Train, and writers going on to work on different things and bringing those people through. I think we were late to that scene. Essentially, we came in as fans, right, working with other people, and so we were in awe of everybody as we've come through. But I mean, I think with Mitchell and Webb, they were probably slightly behind, a little bit behind them. For working with them, for example, we'd written on a sketch show. The guy that judged the BBC talent show we were on in 2001, Phil Clark, he went on to end up running Channel 4 Comedy, and he made Peep Show and stuff. And they were going to make a sketch show called, I think it was Objective as a company. It was originally called just the Objective Sketch Show. And they off the back of Peep Show, they'd got Olivia Colman was going to be in it, Matt King, Steve Edge, Catherine Shepherd. They did a pilot. Who else? I'm going to forget a couple of names of who was in it. It was a really brilliant cast anyway, of a lot of the Peep Show type actors. And we had read through, and Mitchell and Webb were in there as writers. And we had a couple of sketches that were in that. Basically, it was one of our first things, so we wrote way more. They wanted us to bring 2 or 3 sketches. We wrote 20 or something in our evenings and stuff to try and get as much in. And but in one of the read-throughs, there's a Mitchell and Webb sketch, the brain surgeon sketch, that we wrote with Sam Armstrong, Sam Bain and Jesse Armstrong Dussley, and Sam Bain and him wrote Peep Show. And they'd come up with an idea about an arrogant brain surgeon in one of the writers' rooms, and when we built on it and talked about the rocket science punchline and stuff. So we did this in there, and it didn't get used for the Channel 4 show in the end. And the Channel 4 show changed and became a thing called Dogface. Lots of different cast members changed. It sort of became a bit of a mess, the show in the end. Some of the sketches survived. But Mitchell and Webb remembered that one and said, they came to us and said, are you using that one in anything else? And we said, no. So they said, can we have it? And we're like, yeah, of course. So,
are you an accountant too?
No, I work for a charity.
Oh, that's a very selfless job, isn't it? I really admire you. I don't think I could ever do what you do. I say that because it's emotionally draining, not because it's hard. I mean, it's not exactly brain surgery, is it? Which, as a brain surgeon, is what I do.
Lionel, here's your drink. Lionel's a brain surgeon, you know.
Yeah, he mentioned it.
Oh, Jeff, they keep you late at the Space Centre.
As always.
This food round. Have you met Lionel?
No, hello, Lionel.
So, Jeff, how do you earn a crust?
I'm a scientist. I work mainly with rockets. It's pretty tough work. What do you do?
Why, I don't mean to boast, but I'm a brain surgeon.
Brain surgery? Not exactly rocket science, is it?
Then that ended up being one of their sort of better known sketches, but we also wrote 2 or 3 others that got in the bawdy 1970s hospital sketch, if you remember that one. It's like a carry-on sketch where Robert Webb's character can't do innuendo. All the others are doing lots of innuendo, and he's just very crude and stuff. And then a couple of other ones. But so being part of that was great. And I look back at that sketch show, and it's really strong. Mitchell and Webb. Again, we only had 3 or 4 in it, I think, across the series. But then the really formative one was the Peter Serafinowicz show, and that was great because he brought in a lot of other people, and that was I think it's sort of become more of a cult thing. It didn't do huge ratings for those days, but it did big ratings for current days. And I think actually it was almost before its time because the clips were really well suited to YouTube and Twitter and going viral. But that wasn't available then. I mean, YouTube was just about there, but it wasn't anything like what it is now. And that was amazing because we got, the Darth Vader in Love sketch. We were there for that. It was like the props and the sets and the people, Benedict Wong was in a lot of it as well. Matt Berry was in bits of it. It was just such a good cast, such a fun thing. So nuts that BBC Two not allowed it to be, but it was very, very specific humour, very niche. He was doing Trump there before Trump was. He was doing American Apprentice Trump before anything else. There's him, Alan Alda. There's Marlon Brando as Jabba the Hutt. There's just so many very niche, expensive sketches in there. Well, actually, maybe they were not as expensive as they look, some of them, because a lot of them were just filmed on a board, weren't they? But there's a lot of brilliant stuff. But it's aged really well, and obviously Brian Butterfield came out who's still loved, and we're just about to go into. We're about 2 weeks away from his second leg of his tour, so I'm going back out on tour for that, which will be great. But that those bunch of people, the odd times I've been in a room with Simon Pegg or Nick Frost, it's sort of some of those people are heroes, and it's amazing to be around those guys.
No, absolutely, and yeah, I mean, I was surprised, to be honest, when he toured as Brian Butterfield, because you'd think just put Peter Serafinowicz, right? But because sure, I would have thought, well, he's such a big name and he's such a star anyway, having done the acting he's done and things like that. But to just go, you know what? No, I'm doing Brian Butterfield. Was that like a deliberate choice for him? It's always a balance between. So there's a group of us that have written on the sketches that work with Peter on it, and I'm not betraying any trusts here. Some of the jobs I won't tell you what I wrote and what I didn't, but Peter's very good at saying there's him and James, and then Nat Saunders, who writes with James, and then us Dawson brothers. We wrote some of the original sketches, and we've been kept in the loop there. So it's a bit of a team behind it, helping write it, but sometimes difficult to know how much to keep the pretense going for the marketing purposes, because, as you say, Peter Serafinowicz on this round of posters, actually it says Peter Serafinowicz, star of The Gentleman, Guardians of the Galaxy, Shaun of the Dead, which I think that's because there was a woman who was working on the lighting in one of the venues who didn't realise that Peter, who came on and did the sound check, was right. When Brian came out, she said, "Oh, was that guy his stand-in or something?" He goes, "No, that's the guy in the scene." And even the techs don't know what's going on sometimes. So you never quite know, because also there's a book written. Brian's written a book that will be sold on the tour and hopefully beyond. But it's difficult to know. Do people think it's a joke when it's announced? Because the other thing is, on the tour poster we put a date of when the original tour went up. It was all these small British venues, and then Madison Square Garden, but it was on September the 31st. And look, some people go, "Oh, amazing, he's coming to Madison Square." And there's a Brian joke. You never know. Are we holding on to the joke too much and costing ourselves ticket sales or whatever? But he sold out the Hammersmith Apollo now, so it's obviously going all right.
Last year, I, Brian Butterfield, travelled the length but not breadth of the country, sharing my business secrets to sold-out crowds in my seminal seminar, The Call of Now. Due to previously heard-of levels of demand, I will be taking the seminar on tour again in May and June 2024, this time to all new venues, including the Even Tim Apollo. Go to brianbutterfield.co.uk and book your tickets for Brian Butterfield's Call of Now. Now.
And actually, one of the lovely things in the audience is Peter did meet and greets after all the shows last time. You could get a certificate to the Butterfield University and signed by him. And he was great chat with everybody. I mean, Brian, obviously not Peter.
So he
but what was
stays in
great is
character
everybody else
even
keeps
in
the
meet
pretense
and
up as
greets?
well. Yep. Yep. So, he's in that costume. He's been sweating on stage for 2 hours. He has a bit of touch up with the makeup artists. Worked on all these sort of things, Game of Thrones and Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're in doing him as Brian. And then he comes out and he'll stays in character, and people will say, oh, by the way, Brian, I loved Shaun of the Dead. And he goes, I don't know what that film is. Whatever. He just keeps it for an hour afterwards. And but what it then is, you realise it's just this big thing. It's an in-joke that everybody in the audience is in on. And even by attending and thinking you're at this sort of businessman seminar, you're part of the experience, and that's actually the joy of it. It's like a big sort of immersive. I mean, that's too pretentious, but everybody's in on it, and that's why everyone loves it, because you think we know something that other people don't about this, and we're going along with it too. We're part of the audience, are part of the production, I guess, as well. But
Right,
yeah, so
interesting.
yeah, but maybe he does need his name bigger on the poster. But it's the first thing he's ever done on stage, Peter. I mean, he's done the odd appearances reading out jokes from his joke book, but he just hit the ground running, got nominated for a Chortle Award, so he's just incredible. And he there's a lot of audience interaction at the show as well, so a lot of improvisation, and it's so much. The first night when we did a warm-up of that is probably one of my best nights in comedy, because we just didn't know if the show would work at all. It's got a lot of slideshow elements, and it's quite coordinated with the production of that, and lots can go wrong. But also because it's Brian Butterfield, if something goes wrong, no one notices. They just think it's part of the show anyway. It's the beauty of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. It sounds like it's a really good show, really fun. So you're going out on tour. You're out there.
Well, in the first leg, it was very held together by sellotape and string, there's bits where, because Peter's between jobs, there's bits where he's using an auto cue and stuff, and we actually had to operate that, and we had to. And then there's bits where there's a bit in the second half of the show called Brian's Den, where he gets people out the audience to pitch their ideas to him, like Dragon's Den style. And so what we just do is it's helpful for us to be around with Peter in the break, and we could just discuss the ideas that have been sent in, and then pick people out and help him sort of work on what he'll say around it and stuff. But he improvises a lot anyway. He doesn't need much help. It's more of a safety net. But also, it's just it's nice to go out on the road with it and see it done, see how it goes down. And the thing is, every crowd is a home crowd, because you don't really go to Brian Butterfield by accident. You don't go thinking this is a business guru I'm going to listen to. So, but what you do get is some people have brought people that don't quite know what the joke is until 10 minutes in, and then once they tune in, they get it. But it's pretty raucous, and everyone. And also, I think we're amazed because he was in those shows in a kids show called Fit, and he did appear at James's wedding. Peter came and did a speech as Brian Butterfield to surprise James, that we helped him with, and he came out in a sort of a made-up costume. But you don't really ever see him, and because it's been a while. I mean, we didn't think there'd necessarily be an audience, but basically the music promoters crosstown that came to James and Peter and said, would you consider doing it? And I think broadly we were like, well, will there be an audience? And they were like, yeah, there'll be an audience. And so you realise also because it's done well on YouTube, it's crossed the generations as well. There's a lot of kids that are into it, and people that grew up watching it as kids that are now students coming along. So it's a real mix of ages of the shows. But so it's just we'll be out again. Because there's a few of us, we split it between how it work out. But yeah, Peter's back from filming, and then it's Liverpool is the first one, which is literally a hometown gig for him, which will be great. And then but we did Liverpool on the last tour, so yeah, I mean, and as I say, going to the Lead Mill and some of those venues was great to see. It felt like in a band, sort of, as close as I'll get now anyway.
Fantastic. No, that's really cool. That's great. Well, so if people want to look out and check out the Brian Butterfield live, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's I should plug something, shouldn't I? But yeah, it's brianbutterfield.co.uk has all the tour dates, and 2 or 3 of them are sold out now, including the Apollo. Oxford's still got some tickets, I think, at the new theatre. But yeah, there's up and down the country, and in Dublin as well.
Cool. And I just wanted to go back, because one of the little things you've mentioned about like comic relief sketches and stuff. But didn't you you've had a couple of run-ins with the Oasis boys over the years, haven't you?
Yes. So comic relief we've worked on for probably over 10 years now, and we often involved in those sort of multi-celebrity sketches that we started off doing one that was a Britain's Got Talent one that was called Simon Cowell's Wedding, that was all the people from X Factor and BGT that we wrote with. We've done a lot of work with David Williams over the years, and we co-wrote that with him. But then there's one we did, trying to think what year, in 2015, 2016, I think, that was called The National Treasures, and it was basically, it was like auditions to become the next national treasure. And Stephen Fry, Miranda Hart, Sheridan Smith on the front desk, and they were deciding who. It was like a talent show, who gets let in to be a national treasure, and then it goes through all different people. I'm trying to think. Cheryl Cole was on there. The Chuckle Brothers were in there trying to make their case, and then they go to the boss, and it's Ronnie Corbett, and he's having his shoes polished by the Queen, and basically the big punchline was at the end. Was they say, right, whoever the next person to come into the room is, we have to make them a national treasure. And the punchline was, it's Liam walks in, and he swaggers up to the desk, and Stephen's Fry's like, oh my God, we can't let him in, but that's it.
And so, Fry, the next person through that door, and I don't care who they are, you damn well make them a national treasure.
But
the next person.
Sir?
Don't go in there, sir.
Oh, God, no.
Evening.
So, and he was really game when he came in and filmed, and everybody was starstruck. I mean, there was lots of famous people around anyway, but everyone was starstruck with him. But what was interesting is he got a few selfies with people himself as well. And actually, I think he was probably quite nervous because, I mean, he did totally show it, but it's all, whenever we work with people who don't work in comedy naturally, and you're around a lot of comedy people, you're very much out of your comfort zone. But he just came in and gave us proper Liam Gallagher. I think the first thing, he stormed right up to the table, and it was like the cameras weren't even covering him, and he did the first take, and it was like he was so into it that he'd sort of gone out of shot. But basically, so it's like, I think the director had to say, that was absolutely perfectly, but just, we can only see you until you step up to here or whatever. But it was great. He was brilliant. And then I just remember one thing mainly is that there was one, he was seeking out, everyone was trying to get selfies with him, but he made a beeline for the Chuckle Brothers and got a selfie with the Chuckle Brothers, which I just thought was brilliant, you know. But then he's always popped up. I remember, you all might remember this interview, someone said, what's your movie of the year? And he said, the SpongeBob movie or something. I love when he does random sort of, you go, I didn't see that one coming. But if you've got young kids, especially, I suppose that's what it was.
Well, he does, he's a huge fan. And if you follow him on Twitter, and like quite closely on Twitter, like I obviously do, like his tweets are just peppered with like cultural references to 80s and 90s that, or you know, that you know, I for a while I was doing hashtag Liam Explained and say like, oh, when he said this is a reference to this like 1980s, you know, Jossie's Giants or whatever, you know, whatever he's referencing. But he's such a culture vulture. But
there's a lot more going on, I think, than people realise. Again, I think probably those sketches didn't help because they sort of put him as a stereotype. There's a lot going on. And also, I mean, they're both very funny. I mean, from a comedy angle, they're just both very funny in very different ways. Liam in a more raw sort of, you know, way, and Noel's one-line is incredible. Like some, you know, the one of the best jokes I've ever heard is he described Jack White as Zorro on donuts, didn't he? That was Zorro on donuts. That's three-word joke. Isn't that incredible? And also, isn't it perfect as well? That he's but he, you know, he's constantly funny. Noel guy. I met him once. We were having lunch while we were working on a series called Big School. We had lunch in Notting Hill with David Williams, who we were writing it with, and they knew each other, so he came over to the table and we had a good chat for about 5 minutes. Very incredibly starstruck, very careful not to say a dumb thing, but I think I did talk about going to Brighton and that gig and stuff, because you always, the first thing you want to say is, I've seen you live, I've seen you, you know, but try to be measured. But again, he's so sharp and funny, and you know, he doesn't do a lot of those cameos. You know, he has popped up doing things, hasn't he? I remember him in Channel 4 teenage thing, but like in recent years, he's pretty careful about, you don't see him doing a ton of comedy stuff. But yeah, I mean, his quotes are so. I mean, he's always fun. Again, if you're into your football and your music, whenever he was on Soccer AM or whenever he's talking about it, he's just really, he knows what's good what's entertaining and what's funny, and he's always got a few good lines, and you can tell he's thought about it before. It's not the first time he's telling it. There's a comedy writer in there somewhere, I suspect. But Zorro on donuts. I mean, that's a 3-word joke. Come on,
that's brilliant. Well, I've just been sat there chuckling about this, but like holding it in for the last since you said that. That's brilliant. But yeah, like there's Liam's got that surrealism to him. Like the most famous one is like, would Jesus Christ be a pervert if he had a crisp packet on his head? And things like that. And you're like,
there is a sort of a Python-y sort of British Spike Milligan sort of just what, and we had Nico got a lot of that in that sketch we did, the Funny or Die one, of it's the random references, isn't it? It's, as you say, going into what the cultural reference is, and then a sandwich and a this and a that, and it's just a cup of tea and whatever. It's just all these. You can't see where his brain's going, can you? It's never a regular interview. But it's also, I think he's got quite a lot of self-awareness these days as well, which is great as well. I think he knows who he is and what an interviewer wants from him, what an audience wants from him, but doesn't take himself as serious as perhaps he used to. I don't know. It feels like
I agree. I think there was a big change in him from when you see him doing interviews with BDI.
Yeah.
And you can see maybe he was feeling like quite negative because BDI had done so poorly,
or defensive, perhaps. Defensive about it.
And he sat there with Gem and Andy Bell, who are naturally quite. I mean, Gem's quite vivacious, but they're not like Noel. They're used to being in the background a bit.
Yeah.
And Andy's obviously quiet. And then and so Liam was just quite surly, and he wasn't a great interviewer, and he didn't do stuff himself. It was like, well, if BDI are coming on, that's fine. Whereas then suddenly when he's solo, it was like, okay, you've got to come out and talk to Graham Norton and Jonathan Ross and stuff. You've got to do it yourself. And then suddenly you sort of see him blossom into it. You can't hide behind Noel. And he's a bit older, he was, it dawned on me the other day, actually, I turned 44 this month. And I'm like, hold on a minute. I'm now the age that Liam was when I started this podcast 8 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Oh my God. All right. That's weird. But
the mortality maths.
He was that little bit older and wiser. And I completely agree. Self-aware. He knows he doesn't have to ramble on. He knows he can sit there, be cool, because people are quite in awe in his presence. There's not many people like him. You know what I mean? Most people are like, they have to go and put on a show and tell the story. Whereas he can just sit there, let them sound, let them ramble, and then come in with just something killer.
Just a short, something short, just a few words.
Yeah. So I thought, it's been great seeing him on the, that's one of the pleasures actually, is, as much as the music is just seeing him out and about and just being Liam.
He seems more relaxed in himself and more at ease with where he is and stuff. And I always felt that the shame, I thought, I mean, this is getting a bit more serious, but I always thought when the Ariana Grande, the concert where he was saying for Noel, I always felt that was a bit of a missed opportunity for Noel, of like, as a city was hurting, and you just thought, come on from opposite ends of the stage. You don't even have to talk to each other, just stand at opposite ends, sing Don't Look Back in Anger, and then go off your separate ways. But it felt like a sort of a great way of just giving Manchester a moment, and the fact that Liam could do that and Noel didn't, or apparently, again, it's all tabloid, isn't it? I just felt that was a shame at the time. But I think that comes from that was not what you can understand. I imagine that Liam's got, he seems to be more keen for Oasis to get back together at certain times. He's almost like saying to Noel, put it on him. But it felt like that was one that you could do a one-off moment without having to be a big tour or having to do much. And at the time, it was just a bit like everybody else has come from all over the world, and it would have been lovely to see them there. I think also going back to working with brothers and stuff, it's a shame when you see it anywhere that it comes between people. The art should never come between people, I think. Again, so as someone who works with their brother, very different dynamic, obviously, but you have to be careful not to let it, mess up your original relationship, and you have to find a way of making it work both in the working life and outside of that as well. And it's tricky, and it's just a shame to see them. I just think about their mum, basically. I think about their mum, which must be difficult. But anyway, that's the brother stuff.
There we go.
I will tell you the Diggsy stories quickly if you want,
yes,
as well, because that's
on.
another. So when I was at Sheffield, so obviously at the time, I'm reading everything there is about Oasis. Digsy's Dinner, I know the story of it's him in the studio and they've named it after him and all that. And I read about Smaller coming through and Badly Badly, and the first single I think was God I Hate This Town.
Everything I own basically smells, from the bed to my headstone. I'm living in hell, and when I get older, you will as well. Oh God, I hate this town. God gave us women so that we can go swimming with the fishes in the sea, and then they'll make our tea. Ow, ow.
And I got that, and they played Sheffield. I think I sent you a picture of the ticket. It was £2 in the Sheffield Union. And while we were waiting in there, so Johnny, who's my friend who's got all the tickets, and still he writes music reviews now. His name's Stephen Johnson, but me and him were waiting backstage with a couple of our mates, or in the audience with a couple of stage. And I thought I saw, I'd seen pictures of Diggs, and he was walking past, very not aloof or anything. And I just said, "All right, Diggsy." Just thought, "Oh fuck it, I'll say it." All right, Diggsy. And he was like, "All right, mate." And he said, "Oh, are you?" And he just got chatting, and he said, "Oh look, they've given us too many beers in our green room. Why do you lads want to come and have a drink and a chat?" Because it wasn't a huge crowd; it was a decent crowd. We were like, "Yeah, okay." So we went out and hung out with them, with the band, and chatted about all sorts and whatever, and just made to feel at home, and had a bit of their rider and some of their food and stuff. And then they went and did the show, and it was like, this is so good. I came straight in and phoned my brother and said, "I've just hung out with Diggsy and stuff," and it was like, this is amazing. I get one of those that perhaps didn't mean anything to everybody, but everyone knew the song Diggsy's Dinner, so there was that. And so I got even more into Smaller then, and I really liked their first album as well. They played again, I think it was at the Lead Mill, and I was trying to look this up, I couldn't find it. I think they were supporting Catatonia or someone like that. And we were in the queue outside, and he's walking in with some kit or coming back from having to have some food. And he sort of he did a bit of this is only a few months later, I think. He did a bit of a double take as we were in the queue. We were like, we're not going to say hello. But he was like, "Oh, all right, mate." And it was like, he started chatting to us again. It was like, oh my God, he's remembered us from that. You suspect maybe Smaller, there's not loads of people saying hello to him. So then once we were inside the Lead Mill, it was like, again, he came over and we bought him a drink and had a chat for an hour or so before the bands came on. And same again in London a little bit later on. So it was really nice. It was just like very down to earth, hanging out with him. I've heard your interview with him as well, which was great, because there isn't a lot out there, that Smaller Sums now, and that era of bands, they're not as on top of social media and stuff to keep in touch. I mean, they're out there a bit there now, aren't they? But there was a big bit of the internet where you just couldn't find anything about anybody, what they're up to, and what's great. I mean, that was a brilliant interview. I loved that. And likewise, the Real People I saw when I was 17 as well. And he was telling me then, I think he said it on your podcast, he was saying, "Oh, I love the Real People. I used to babysit them." He was like, "I used to babysit them," and I was like, "Oh, your cousins and stuff." So you start to that sort of world around Oasis when they were coming through. Really, it was really interesting seeing some of the components of that. But he was a really nice guy, Dixie. He was great fun. But again, going to like lessons, it's probably the first person I've ever gone. Like I will say he's famous. He might not think he is, or whatever. But first famous person I'd reached out to say hello, like been bold enough to go, "Hi, how you doing?" sort of thing. And then he responded and was really nice. And I do often wonder if he'd have been a bit of a dickhead about it or aloof, would I ever have? Because in our industry, you move in rooms with people that you are, they're your heroes and whatever, and you do think, well, would I have been brave enough to speak to me? Maybe it's emboldened me a bit to actually be a bit more relaxed and hope that people are, do meet your heroes. That whole thing. You must have spoken to a lot of people on this podcast that are heroes, and you hope that they're you hope that they're nice.
No, absolutely. And I think that was a big thing for me. And like you said about the fact that there just isn't a lot of stuff out there about a lot of people. I mean, now it's kind of picking up. I think there's like James Hargreaves does a great job on YouTube of like interviewing a lot of people and doing a lot more deep dives. And there's sort of, there's more in-depth stuff is coming out now, and there's other podcasts and things. But that was, for me, it was like, it's great. It's exciting for me to get to talk to people and get to talk to heroes and things. But it was more like a journalistic duty to get this stuff out there. You know, I've you read these names on liner notes or whatever, and you're like, or you hear like, oh, there's, this person has pops up as a talking head for 5 seconds on a documentary. And like, well, who are they? Like, what what was their role and how did they get there? And so for me, it was like just a great thing to just get that intersection of like, there's all these myriad millions of people. At some point, there's an interaction with Oasis, whether it's as a fan or whether it's as a band or someone that helped with the band or was in the band, and then they go off, and so that's just that nugget in the middle. But yeah, no, and it's funny, like my sort of when I've met famous people in the past, like even like before the podcast, like I met seeing, I think it was the Charlatans or the Verve or whatever, and James from Star Sailor was in the crowd. And I went over and I was like, I went and said hello, and I said, oh mate, you guys are a breath of fresh air. And this name had just come out, and he said, oh, cheers mate, cheers mate. I went back, and my wife was like, what did you say to him? I said, oh, he said you're a breath of fresh air. She's like, you prick, what a stupid thing to say. So that's it. Now anytime I see someone, it happened the next time was I saw Goldie Looking Chain on the train into from Didcot into London. I think it was when Maggot was on Big Brother.
Right, okay, so it's probably the peak of tabloid fame for him.
Tabloid, God Looking Chain, and they're on the train, and you can spot them a mile away. There's 12 of them.
Well, they've probably got the whole carriage, haven't they?
Absolutely, and then obviously smoking and everything, and so I was like, I'm going over, and so I went over and said, guys, you're a breath of fresh air, and obviously they weren't, because they're all like, there's just this weed fog around them. And so, and that was it. So now, anytime I meet someone famous, I've got to call them a breath of fresh air. It's kind of
that's the title of the book, isn't it? Of the interviews book is a breath of fresh air when it comes out.
But no, it's been great, and like most people are cool, and you just realise that they are cool. And it's so funny that some people like are absolutely fine, and you just reach out to them over social media or whatever, and they're like, yeah, that's fine, we'll set it up. Whereas then some people, like, who are significantly lower down the chain, you've got to go through publicists and people like that. And it's like, oh, you've got 40 minutes and you can't ask about this. It's like, seriously? I just dealt with this other person who's like really famous, and it was not a problem at all.
I think what's probably good about the timing of your podcast is enough water's gone under the bridge that some of those things that would have been difficult to talk about within 5 or 10 years, the real people stuff and whatever, and that everyone's got beyond that a bit and has a bit of perspective and can talk about it and see it a bit differently. And I think it's, I always felt there was a lot of the real people in the early sound, but then you are what you listen to and what you're around and stuff. And but I think also you see it in writing is some people have an idea, and it's the people that make the money off it is not necessarily the people that came up with the ideas. And I'm not saying that about Oasis, by the way, here, but I'm just saying that there's a model in TV and film where a lot of it is about, a lot of people say, I came up with that joke, or I came up with that character, or one of the writers of it, I think Coogan and Partridge, there's always debate about, because I think Leon Herring wrote the first ones, but then he turned it into something else. And it's always tricky about those things. But I think with distance, everyone can look back and go, well, this is how it played out, and that's what's interesting, and take some of those sorts of they take some of the sort of heat out of the situation. You can, with a bit of perspective, and everyone's just matured and moved on a bit, and that's what makes it really interesting, I think, hearing those people. And also, as you can tell from me, if you ask most people, if they haven't been asked about a lot of stuff, I mean, nobody's ever asked me about the Oasis sketch from Funny or Die, and that's why it was so nice to hear it when you talked about it with Nico, because and people want to talk. How many people are saying today? I think you sometimes assume people are always asking people questions, but how many people are asking the real people about how Definitely Maybe was recorded, and how many people are asking Dixie, what inspired it? Oh, we actually got. We had a pilot that we made for ITV2 about 10 years ago, and we had a snippet of a song from Cook the Books in it, and like they were saying, we're sure this is quite an obscure song to play, and we were like, no, it has to be. We were just hopeful that if it got on TV, there'd be some royalties would get back to Digsy. I think I'm not even sure he wrote the song retrospectively. I don't know if he'd have got any, but it was one of those things of going, we have very little power over what music goes into things we make, but every so often you want to try and sneak something in to give a bit of payback or whatever if you can anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Andrew, it's been really good to talk, mate. It's been fantastic to catch up, and yeah, good luck on the Brian Butterfield tour. And what you up to next, or are you not allowed to tell us?
No, well, we've mostly done TV in the past. The last 2 or 3 years, we've been writing more films, which is a slower process, but it's where we wanted to get to. We were on set writers on a film called The Bubble, which was on Netflix, that we got to work right next to Judd Apatow for 3 months, which was amazing. And we'd already started writing a few screenplays. We've got one with working title and another one with Alfonso Cuarón's company. He's not a comedy guy, but the idea we've got is in that sort of well, I can't say anything about that one. But anyway, it's a slow moving business, but we're just on 2 rewrites of different films at the moment, and then hopefully another one to come in the summer. But chipping away at things, we did Ant and Dec. We've worked with Ant and Dec a lot over the years. We wrote a bit on the last series of Saturday Night Takeaway, and then bits of Butterfield. That'll see us through till the end of June, and then and on with the film stuff really. So
awesome.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, we could do another one if one of those films comes out, and then I can use it as a plug. I'm not sure I've got any more Oasis stories left to mine, I'm afraid.
We'll have to go and like dig them out and maybe try and hang around with Gwigsy for a bit or something and get some stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. All right, well look, the kids can follow you at Dawson Bro.
I'm at A Dawson Bros on Twitter and probably on Instagram, but I don't really use that so much. But that's where it's a lot of it is Oxford United talk at the moment. But you'll have to put up with that as well.
Cool. Well, yeah, good luck. I hope, well, obviously for both our sakes, I hope it all goes well.
Well, it's all about the drama. Whatever happens, day at Wembley with the family and everything, and that, I don't really want to lose, obviously, but better to have those days than not, isn't it?
Yeah, back in the Championship and Des Buckingham. Like, I think, well, just to close off, like, that was for me why I've gone more back into supporting them rather than just follow the results, was really Des coming in, because what a story. Like, for people that don't know, he's an Oxford boy. He grew up as a all his family are fans. He's then went through the youth system, got injured, I think, and then went into coaching at like a really crazy young age, coaching like the youth
16, 17, I think,
and then went off and has coached in Miami, India and Mumbai, I was going to say, and like all around the world in all kind of random different places, and now come back to Oxford as the head coach, and it's just fucking been a transformation. I mean, what a hero.
Yeah, because he had a bumpy start, but I mean, personally, I'm just desperate for him to succeed, and I'm so glad he's got to the playoffs, because he's he'd been in New Zealand, Australia, he'd won the league and the cup in Mumbai in India, but he was part of the Manchester City football group, the CFG, and they don't take coaches on unless they're very good coaches. So, but I think the problem is there's some Oxford fans that think if you haven't done 1,000 league games, then you don't know what you're doing. So there's a bit of going, well, look, I think he knows his stuff. We've got to back him, and the players have to be behind him, and also he's just got to settle in a bit. First couple of months he's just moved over back to Oxford, in Cowley, having not grown up in Cowley, and he hasn't been around, and a lot of the support staff went with Liam Manning when he went, so he had to bring in lots of people, and there were lots of injuries. And I always felt like, ride it out, give him a chance. Also, Oxford don't tend to sack managers too quickly, and I always feel give him a chance, because I don't like those clubs that keep sacking people who after 2 months it doesn't work. So let him build his team, and so we drifted out of the playoffs, and then finally got back in, and now we're in the final. I think no one can question him. And whatever happens, you just go, this guy with a summer transfer window to bring in some more of his own players, and also with the players believing him and the fans believing him, is great. And you could see how stressed he was. It's hard enough being a football manager, but when it's your boyhood club, and this is your one chance to manage them as well. If you get sacked, you probably won't ever come back. So it's like, I think he'll be a great coach, and he'll move on to other things, I'm sure. But I'd love him to do a lot with us first before he does that.
I mean, there's a huge opportunity for Oxford. Like, I remember back in the 90s, all the talk of like Thames Valley United, Robert Maxwell was going to merge Oxford and Reading and make because it is a big, that area. Like we're saying about football is the same thing. Like when Reading were in the Prem, you could go and see Reading, but the closest you've got to Premier League is Birmingham or London, right? So
well, the thing they always say is, there's only one professional sports team in Oxfordshire, and that's Oxford United. So and in the I was there. I'm old enough to have been there when they were playing in the top flight and the Milk Cup final. So and there were a lot of people. There are a lot of Oxford fans that want to come out when they're doing a bit better, as with any club. Back to the fair weather fans thing, but it's got potential to be pretty big. Also, it's got, when you look at the sides that are in the top flight, you go, well, Bournemouth and Luton. I think we've been in and around them before. It's possible. You just have to be run right. But to be honest, also I'm a bit wary of going up into the Championship and getting beaten everywhere. I don't want that either. So, but anyway, you want to get promoted. That's the point. Some people have said, "Are we ready?" And you just go, well, "You're never ready. You just go up and hope." But it's one of the threads in my life, as with the bands and the music. It's just that's a constant. And just like those early Oasis gigs, I was in early. I was in before and I've stuck around after it got less popular at Oxford United as well. But we're back on the search. I'll be good at Wembley. Whatever happens, a big day out.
Well, have a great time. Hopefully, I don't know if this will be out before then, so we will know one way or the other.
Yeah.
How it's been, but really great to speak to you, Andrew. All the best.
Great. Thanks very much, James.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Really great to catch up with Andrew, and just certain things there, like, he wrote Ringo Remembers. I love those sketches. Oh my God. Just so many things. I was like, the National Treasure Liam thing, like he was there, all these amazing parts of history and these things that I absolutely love that he was involved with. It was really, really exciting to talk to Andrew. Really good guy. Let's hope Oxford do it. If you're an Oxford fan, or if you're a neutral, or obviously if you're a Bolton fan, you probably want Bolton to win. But let's get Oxford up. They've been out of the sort of top two divisions for so long. It'd be great for them to get back, and it's an amazing story. Like we were talking about, that manager Des Buckingham. Just have a look at his story. It's incredible. So anyway, that's this weekend coming as I'm posting this. So we shall find out how he does. So really great to talk to Andrew. Thank you very much. We've got a couple of interesting episodes coming up. I'll be talking to the author, Andrew Rooney, who has written a book going through all the Oasis songs from start to finish, which is a great idea. It's an idea I had, so I'm really gutted that he actually jumped in and did it. But, it looks like he's done a really good job of it anyway. So well done, Andrew. And we'll be talking about that shortly. And there's a few more irons in the fire. And I am going to go back onto Patreon to do that, Oasis and Star Wars connections, because I think that's really, really good fun. And pretty stupid, and so the sort of stuff that probably should be only for patrons, because that's ridiculous. But anyway, there we go. That'll do it for today. Thank you very much for listening. Most of all, thanks go to our patrons. You put your money where your mouth is, and it's greatly appreciated. You can become a patron at patreon.com/OasisPod, which is where we post bonus episodes. The episodes tend to go up early, and you get access to the Discord, which is really good fun. Lots of very cool people hanging out over there. And that's where I tend to use it as sort of a, I'll if I'm asking questions or coming up with different ideas or sharing photos or things like that, that tends to be where I do it, because that's sort of the community really is that. So if you're on Patreon already and want a link to the Discord, ping me a message. Or if you want to join Patreon, then go and check it out. Email me, oasispod@gmail.com. If you want to come along to the Salford Lads Club show, then make sure you hit the link in the description, or just look up Bittersweet Home and you'll find it. And I will hopefully see you guys there. Right, that'll do it for today. Thank you very much for listening. Stay in touch, stay engaged.
Beatle fans, and welcome to Ringo Remembers. People think that being in the Beatles must have been a lot of fun. Well, it was, most of the time. But, sometimes it was bloody awful. Especially towards the end. He would argue and fight. Sometimes the arguments just got bloody ridiculous.
I just think we should go to the toilet. That's all I'm saying,
Sounds sensible to me. I am pretty full.
Why is it we always have to do what you want us to do?
Hey, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, We're just human beings. It's a physical fact. I didn't design the human digestive system. We just all need to go to the toilet. Simple as that.
I really don't need the toilet.
You did have that bloody big lentil curry, George.
You're not listening. We don't need to go to the toilet. All right, maybe we do need to go to the toilet. Are you absolutely bursting up?